Are you feeling hopeful? How hopeful are you feeling? I'm an optimist, and I have a positive mental attitude, and I work really hard to feel hopeful and optimistic about the future. And I don't know if you can resonate, but I think it's getting increasingly difficult to feel hopeful and optimistic about the future. And actually, at a family wedding last year, my uncle came up to me and said, "Dawn, I need to talk to you. I need you to tell me something that will make me feel hopeful about the future." And that was a bit of a heavy conversation to get into in the queue for the bar at my cousin's wedding. But I think what he was getting at there is, honestly, look around us at the state of the world. Whether you're thinking about the state of our national politics and the corruption and incompetence and the disdain for our democracy, whether you're thinking about the environment and the climate crisis and the nature and biodiversity emergencies, whether you're thinking about social injustice and inequality and the struggle in people's lives and the cost of living crisis, or you turn on the TV and there's a war going on and the impacts of that war on people around the world and the looming threat of mass starvation as a result. And then underlying all of that, and maybe to some extent caused by some of that, is the mental health crisis that's become an epidemic, a pandemic. All of us, individually and collectively, are finding it harder and harder to feel positive and optimistic about the future and the future that our kids are going to inherit. So as a change maker and as an organizer and an activist and a leader of various different groups and organizations, I need to feel that sense that what I do can make a difference in the world. And I'm constantly grappling with this impending sense of futility. And I think that comes from this awareness of kind of the scale of the challenges that are facing us in society and in the world, and the comparative tiny scale of us and what we can do here on our own doorstep in our own lives. And I think as change makers, and when I use that term, I don't mean to alienate anybody. I'm using the words change maker, leader, activist in their broadest possible sense. I mean all of us, everyone who cares about what's happening in the world and wants to make a difference, or at least would want to make a difference if only we didn't feel so hopeless about the future. So I've tried to come up with ways to reinvigorate not only my own sense of hopeful optimism about the future, but to help reconnect other people in local communities with a sense that they can make a difference, that they can make change happen, that they can effect change in their own lives, in their own communities, in the places where they live. And Margaret Wheatley calls this creating islands of sanity, where despite the chaos that surrounds us in the world, what can we do where we are standing to create those islands of sanity, to build resilience so that we're better able to cope with whatever disasters are coming down the line. So today I want to talk about something that we've developed. It's called a shared vision meeting, a shared vision meeting. And this is a social intervention. It's a meeting, it's an event. Anyone can run one of these. I'm hoping that you'll all go off and run your own shared vision meetings in your own communities and organizations. But a shared vision meeting is founded on the principle of radical inclusivity. So one of the problems, I think, in the world is that too often decisions are made by small groups of people behind closed doors, decisions that affect all of us and all of our lives, and we're not involved and we're not consulted. And I think over the time, over decades, that has created massive disengagement, disempowerment among all of us. So a shared vision meeting turns that idea on its head and goes for radical inclusivity. Everyone is invited. So host a conversation, host a meeting to which everyone from across the whole system is invited to be part of it. You want the broadest possible diversity of different perspectives and different people with different ideas, people who might even disagree with you on politics and current affairs, people with different life experiences, different attitudes, different ideas. So you can create radical inclusivity in a number of ways by being mindful about how you invite people into your meetings and events, the words you use, the tone of voice, making sure people really do feel that they are invited to be part of these conversations. And you can work hard as well to reach out and make sure that the right people actually turn up, the people who are hard to reach, who wouldn't normally want to get involved in a conversation about the future, who feel disengaged and disempowered and hopeless and don't think that their voice matters or that their ideas will be listened to. So the fundamental thing about a shared vision meeting is it brings together people from across the whole system. And in my experience, the quality of the outcomes of any meeting are directly correlated to the diversity of viewpoints and voices that you have in the room at that meeting. If we're just talking to ourselves, listening to people who think like us, we're not coming up with new solutions and new ideas. And frankly, that's what's created the mess that we're all in already. So a shared vision meeting is really simple, and it's founded on 4 key questions, 4 generative questions. Now, the questions we ask in any context, in any situation that we find ourselves in, are kind of a lens through which we see the world. And in that way, the questions that we ask almost start to create the reality that we experience around us. And that's why we call them generative questions. There's a really big difference between asking, what problems are you really worried about at the moment? And think of the conversation you could have if you asked that question. Versus asking, what would you love to see? What are you excited about? What fills you with a sense of passion and purpose? And think about the energy that you'd have from that conversation. Or if you were to ask, how are we going to fix this terrible problem? Versus asking, how can we make this situation the best that it can be? What would we love to see? What do we want for the future? The energy shifts, the whole dynamic of the conversation is different. And this approach of asking a more beautiful, more empowering, more positive question is called appreciative inquiry. And it's an approach that was pioneered and developed by a guy called Dr. David Cooper-Ryder over in America. And his ideas have been taken forward and developed into really practical, usable tools for communities to use by an organization called the Flourishing Leadership Institute in Cleveland, Ohio. So a shared vision meeting is an appreciative inquiry intervention. It's a social technology, but as I say, it's not rocket science. It's really simple. It's 4 questions. Now, the first of those questions is what we call the purpose question. So you've got your diverse group of perspectives in a meeting, and this works at all scales, from small Zoom meetings over the course of 2 hours to big community meetings over the course of 2 days. It can work in small teams and organizations, and it can work in local places, bringing together all your local stakeholders. It could even work in your family around the dining table. The purpose question kicks us off with an invitation to connect with what's important to us. So the first question you might ask might be, what gives you a great sense of purpose around this topic? What feels important to you? Why have you come here today? What connects you to a sense of purpose and meaning around this topic? And the trick to getting people to share openly and talk about their innermost feelings is to, first of all, give people a little bit of time just to collect their own thoughts, write down a few notes for themselves, reflect on that question, and then invite them to have that conversation in a really small group, like 2 or 3 people, where everyone has the opportunity to talk and be heard and be listened to, but also to hear from other people about their own sense of purpose and what drives them. And people always emerge from those initial conversations already feeling a greater sense of possibility, and more connected to a sense of purpose and meaning and connected to each other. So that's the first question, the purpose question. The second question is an appreciation question. And the simplest way of asking this question, if you're in a community or in an organization, ask, what do you love about this place? What do you value? What do you appreciate? What are the things that you are really grateful for? And one of the ways you could ask this is to say, if everything changes about this community or this place over the next 5 or 10 years, what are the things that we never want to change? The things that we value and appreciate that we never want to change. Now, this is a strength-based approach, it's an asset-based approach, and it creates such a strong foundation of connecting to what's already working well, what we love, what we appreciate, and it's really magical when you're in communities that everyone would look at and think this is a downtrodden place, this is a deprived area. When you ask people what they love about local places, they'll tell you there's plenty of things that people love. And it's so easy, isn't it, to have a conversation about everything that's broken and everything that we hate and everything that we wish was different. It's much more rare to ask people to think about what they love and what they appreciate. And what it does is it creates this powerful foundation, a positive foundation for what comes next. And what comes next, question number 3, is an imagination question. So this is where it really becomes a shared vision meeting. You're asking people to connect around a vision for the future. What would you love to see? You can ask this in a number of ways. You can say, if you had a magic wand and you could change things, what would you love to see? If you woke up in 5 years' time and everything was different, everything had worked out exactly as you hope it will work out, what does that look like? What's the ideal future? You're asking people to think about what they would hope for, what they dream of, what they would love to see. And again, it's not about the practical realities. You're not asking them to think about how they're going to do that and is it realistic and is it feasible. You're asking people to connect with their vision of what they would love to see. And I personally think there is very little that is more powerful than a vision of what we want. And when we turn on the news and we scroll through our news feeds and we have these negative conversations about problems and challenges and everything that's wrong, are we offering an alternative? Can we see what we want instead? Or are we just dwelling in the problems? And that's disempowering and we feel hopeless. Whereas when we have a vision of what we want, whether in our own lives, in our own businesses, in our organizations, in our communities, there's something kind of magical about the way that you're subconsciously and intentionally moving in the direction of the goals that you set for yourself. And more powerful than that is when it's a shared vision, when you know that there are others who have similar ideas or overlapping ideas, and you can create that shared vision of what we want. And I really think that's what we're missing in society and in our communities. We can complain about what we don't want, but do we have a clear shared vision of what we do want? So the fourth part of this meeting, and so far it will have been an inspiring, passionate, purposeful conversation. The feedback we get from all of these shared vision meetings is that people, for the first time, start to feel positive, and they've met people and heard perspectives that they hadn't considered before, and we've created a respectful and safe place for different perspectives to be heard and for people to speak from their heart about what's important to them. So the fourth stage is to reflect and take action, to say, we've had this amazing conversation, we've all shared what we love and our visions of what we'd love to see, so what can we do? And sometimes I put the emphasis in different places. What can we do? Let's not talk about all the things we can't do in our community and all the obstacles and the problems and the barriers. What can we do? And what can we do? Let's not talk about, oh, the government should do this, and their local authority should do that, and someone else should do this. What can we do collectively? And again, this turns on its head the idea that there are certain powerful people making decisions behind closed doors and says we all have something to contribute, and especially in our local places, in the places where we live or the places where we work, we have massive agency in those places. So what can we do collectively? What can we contribute? And because of the energy that's in the room, because of the generative questions that you've asked, people come forward with ideas and offer to share their resources and want to get involved in things and make stuff happen. So you emerge from that conversation with a whole range of different, we call them emerging projects, subgroups forming around different ideas. And the really brilliant thing about a shared vision meeting is it's endlessly cyclical and regenerative, which is exactly what we need. So let's say one of the emerging ideas from a community meeting is, let's create a community garden where we can grow some of our own food and reconnect to nature and look after each other's mental health and well-being. So that idea comes out of this process of co-creation with a broad, diverse range of people from across the community. What's the first thing that emerging subgroup needs to do to create that community garden? They need to hold a shared vision meeting. They need to bring people together and say, right, we're thinking of creating a community garden. Who wants to be involved? Who wants to contribute? Who's got ideas? Invite a radically inclusive range of people from the local area, bring them in, ask a purpose question. Why does this feel important? Ask an appreciation question. What assets have we got? What resources have we got that we can use? What wealth and fortune have we got to apply to this idea? And what would we love to see? What does this amazing community garden look like 5 years from now? And then reflect and take action. And on and on and on. And these are the sorts of conversations that we need to be having at every level, in every organization, in every community. And I would love for you guys to go out and have your own shared vision meetings in whatever context, whatever meetings you're holding, from the smallest team discussion to the largest business conference. Make it about co-production, co-creation, involve and empower people, and you'll be amazed at the magic that emerges. And that is how I stay hopeful, because I'm in these conversations and I see hope and empowerment being reborn in people who beforehand never knew that their voice could be listened to and never knew that they might be invited to contribute to something that would make change happen. So please, go and try, have your own shared vision meetings and let me know how it goes. Thank you very much.